The main difference I've observed between successful people and unsuccessful people isn't intelligence or opportunity or resources. It's believing our goals are impossible to accomplish. Failure and uncertainty is common, and when you're pursuing your dreams, the closer you get to realizing them, the more obstacles you're going to encounter. The person who ultimately succeeds is the one who never gives up. It's the person who, despite not having all the answers, ventures forward, trusting they will discover the solution along the way. It's amazing the things we can accomplish when we don't give up. And on this week's episode, I'm going to be talking about some of those things that are keeping you from pursuing your goals. What are some of the lies you have been telling yourself that have prevented you from really living the life that you want? Stay tuned, and that's what we're getting into on this week's episode of the Empowerment Hour. You are tuned in to the Empowerment Hour podcast, your digital global classroom where individuals across all ages, backgrounds, and career levels tune in for guidance and motivation to live life on their own terms. It's where inspiring thought leaders, modern-day influencers, and social game changers come to discuss their own personal journeys and have real conversations about the journey to success. I am your host, Nancy Ruffin, and every week I bring you raw and unfiltered conversations about the obstacles we all encounter, the times we felt like giving up, and the things that keep us forging forward. It's where passion and purpose intersect. So if you're ready to start living on purpose, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. What's up, y'all? It's your host, Nancy Ruffin, and we are back with another week of the Empowerment Hour podcast. I hope that you guys are finishing off the month strong. For me, I kicked off January with a bunch of vision board workshops, as I always do at the beginning of a new year. And I'm finding that although I only planned to have 2 workshops, I now have added an additional one simply because the demand has been really high and you guys just can't seem to get enough. So for those of you who got shut out of the first 2 because they sold out so quickly, I have added an additional workshop that is taking place on Sunday, February 17th at my girl Raygrid's new spot, Spiritually Sparkled on 3rd Avenue in the Bronx. You guys do not want to miss this one. If you missed the first 2, this is going to be the last workshop of the year. So if you want to get in, if you want to get serious about your goals for this year, then I encourage you to get your tickets ASAP. I am already 50% sold out, and I anticipate to sell out before this week is done. So if you haven't bought your ticket, head on over to www.gamechanger2019.eventbrite.com. Cop your ticket, buy one for your friend. This is also open to men. Ladies, for those of you who have been following me for years, you know that traditionally the workshop has been women only, but this year, for the first time ever, I have opened it up to men because we had some men attend my last workshop, and I will tell you that it completely changed the dynamic and the energy of the workshop. And I think that as we continue to grow and evolve in a post-Me Too culture and society, that it's going to be even more imperative that men and women just understand the direction that we're going in, and bringing men in really allowed the women to kind of hear some of the things that men think about, some of the things that they stress about. And it also allows men to hear in a very safe way, in a very open way, women become vulnerable in a way that we've only ever allowed other women to see us in. And they did that amongst these men, and it was just phenomenal. It was by far one of the, if not the best workshop that I've had to date, and I've had dozens of workshops throughout my career. So if you have a guy in your life that you think would benefit from strategic visioning work, from really creating a roadmap for the goals that you want to manifest for you this year, then this is that workshop. So you can make it a date night. You can bring your sons, your brothers, your BFFs. I think that it's really a great opportunity to just not only connect with each other, but also to connect and network with other people. You never know who's going to be in the room. You never know who is going to be in a position to help you get that step closer to your own dreams and the things that you want to accomplish. So go on, head over to Eventbrite, cop your ticket, and then post about it. Let people know that you're going to be in the building. It's happening February 17th. I think it's from 12 to 3. Don't quote me on the time, but all of the details are on the Eventbrite site. So make sure that you guys head over there. And so, yeah, I actually want to get right into this week's topic. As I mentioned in the opening, a lot of times we become our own worst enemies and we talk ourselves out of the things that we want to accomplish. And I think it's important to talk about these things, especially now because it's the beginning of the year, because many of us have already started thinking about our goals, the things that we want to manifest, the things we want to work on throughout the year. And yet, for some of us, even though we do those things, even though we plan out as best as we can, there's something that stops us or that prevents us from moving forward. And today I had the opportunity to have lunch with some friends, and one of the women who ended up joining us just by chance, because we happened to be there, she showed up and asked to join us. And she was someone that we all knew, and we were like, sure, no biggie. Again, I believe that it was the universe really guiding her to us at that moment in time. She needed to be there. We needed to be there. The conversation had to be had because I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that God uses each of us in a way to be of service to others. And there's always messages that need to be passed on to other people. And God always uses, his own ways and his own devices to make sure that those things happen. And so I don't think it was a coincidence that we were all there at the same time. But one of the things that we talked about was how she was kind of feeling, what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't know. I think she was doubting herself. She was feeling unsure, and almost as if her current situation is a reflection of failure. I think she was that's probably the word that I'm looking for. I think that because certain things have happened in her life and she is not at the point where I guess maybe she had envisioned herself, that she's failing in some way. And part of the conversation was that she has had to kind of take a step back in her position in life so that she can set herself up to really take it to that next level. So one of the things that she had mentioned was that she has recently sublet her apartment and she has moved in with a family member. And she finds herself probably missing the comforts of having your own space and having, I guess, to share a space with someone else. For her is a reflection of not progressing. But what I want you guys to understand that every single step that we take in our lives is directing us directly towards our purpose. It's preparing us for that thing that we're supposed to be doing. And sometimes those minor setbacks, those things that we feel are keeping us from progressing, are really the things that are preparing us for major comebacks, right? I don't know if you guys have ever heard that, but they say minor setback for a major comeback. And that is what I really see for this young woman, only because aside from how she was feeling momentarily, what I see in her is someone who is passionate about really wanting to succeed, about wanting to get to that next level, about leveling up and really stepping into her purpose and her power. And people like that never stay left back for long. Okay, people like that always figure out a way to push past whatever it is that has kept them where they are, and they find a way to push through. And so I don't know how many of you find yourselves in that season of harvest, right? You know, when we go through those harvest seasons, nothing is really happening. We're just planting and we're sowing the seed, and it's the nurturing of that planting where you're really cultivating the season for when you're going to reap, right? When you're going to reap what you sow. And so I don't know how many of you guys are there, but I need for you to understand that there's a season for everything. And although you might be in your harvest season right now, you have to understand that God is working something new in you. He is preparing you for something greater than your wildest dreams. When I think about all of the setbacks that I've had in my own life, in my own career, never would I had imagined that I would be exactly where I am today. Quick story. 10 years ago, when my husband and I had first decided to purchase our home, and I may have shared this story on the podcast before, or you may have read about it in one of my books. But for those of you who are new, and for those of you who may not have heard it, when we were looking to purchase a house, I still am knee deep in student loan debt. And we applied for our mortgage, and our mortgage broker, or the lender, was saying, you guys are not going to be able to afford your house. Even if you get approved for a mortgage, I give you 2 months before you default on the loan, because there's no way that you can cover the mortgage, the expenses that come with the house, in addition to all of the student loan debt that I had. Now, talk about feeling defeated. My husband and I had spent an entire year paying off all of our credit card debt. We had sacrificed so many things that year. We were still, it was just him and I. We didn't have any kids. And at that time, we used to travel a lot. We would go out all the time. And so for that year, we cut all of that stuff out. There were no vacations. There were no nights out. We weren't going out to dinner. We weren't doing anything except saving all of our money. I was taking breakfast and lunch to work. He was eating breakfast at home, not even eating lunch. I mean, it was just ridiculous, the amount of sacrifice that we had did just so that we can set ourselves up for what we believed was the opportunity to become homeowners. And then with just a few words, here comes this person who doesn't really know us except for what he's seeing on paper. He doesn't know our commitment. He doesn't know our drive. He doesn't know that we had already figured out how we were going to pay, but yet he was telling us, even if you get approved, you're going to default in a couple of months. Well, let me tell you how God works, right? It's just so funny when I think about this story. I had just got a job, or started a job, right during the process of the mortgage application. Now, when you apply for mortgages, the lender wants to see that you are in a stable job, right? They want to see, they wanted to see your last 4 or 5 pay stubs, something like that. I had just started this job literally maybe 2 or 3 weeks before our closing date. and I hadn't gotten paid yet. So I didn't have any pay stubs to show. And even with that, like what I had did was I had submitted a letter from the employer kind of stating what my salary was and all of this and all of that. And I don't know, well, clearly they must have accepted it. But all I know is that in the midst of all of that happening, and in the midst of this mortgage broker telling us that we were going to default on the loan, I had gotten this brand new job, and I had gotten an increase in salary of $20,000. So here was this man who just a few weeks earlier was telling us, you can't afford this. God came up and said, you know what? You can't tell them what they can't do. Only I could do that. And he stepped through with this new job opportunity for me that clearly paid off because I'm still there. This is the job that I'm at now. And since then, I have increased my salary phenomenally, within the time that I've been there. But I share this story to remind you that we never know how these things that we perceive as setbacks are really preparing us for something greater. Now, had I listened to this broker, if I would have paid attention to anything that he was saying to my husband and I, we could have just given up. And we could have said, you know what, let's not even bother going through with this, because why go through with something if we're just going to get denied, right? Why go through with this if we're just going to get our hearts broken, towards the end of the process? But we didn't give up. I didn't let that setback stop me. I didn't trust what he was saying. I knew that owning a home was going to be in our destiny. I knew that the home that we had put an offer on, which is the one I live in right now, was going to be that house, because we had looked at over 100 houses, and either they were shitholes that required a lot of work, or they were out of our budget. And even with that, even with the ones that were out of our budget, they still needed a lot of work to be done. And so when our house got up on the market, the first day that they put it on they listed it, we were the first couple to see the house, and it was perfect. It was move-in ready. We didn't need to do anything to the house, like to move in. Of course, we ended up doing upgrades later on, but for the most part, it was a beautiful, livable home. And it was within our budget. I mean, it was like God had sent this house for us. And so there was nothing that this person was going to tell me to kind of detract me from what I knew in my heart was meant to be. And then it was, because then I got this other job that really gave us a cushion, right? Because before that, we would have been able to afford the house, but we really had to be great money managers, and we would have really had to just been really strategic on the things that we were spending our money on. And not that we're frivolous spenders, but when you're a young couple, you still want to live and enjoy your life. And so when I got that new job with the increase in salary, it really just alleviated a lot of that financial pressure that we would have had that job not come through. So sometimes you got to go with your gut, even when it feels scary, especially when it feels scary, because I will tell you that fear is the thing that keeps many of us from going towards the things that we want. You have to be able to step out of your comfort zone. And you have to take those moments of struggle, those moments where you're faced with these insurmountable odds or these challenges that you think have been sent to you to prevent you from moving forward. No, those things, those moments, that struggle is really where God is testing you. That's where God is building you up. He is building up your strength. He's testing your faith. He's really seeing how much you really want this thing that you say you want. Because if it was easy, right, what incentive would you have to continue working for it and going towards your dreams, right? If you're not being challenged, then you're never going to know how bad you want something. God uses, those tests to create your testimony. Your mess becomes your message. Your trials are what are preparing you for those victories. You can't give up on yourself. You can't talk yourself out of your dreams. You have to understand that if you have a dream, if you have a vision, if you have a goal, that thing was put in you by God. And so if he's given you that vision, if he's given you that dream, what makes you think that he has not also given you the skills, the talents, the gifts, the resources that you're going to need to bring that dream to reality? You can't give up on yourself just because things get hard. You can't have a pity party just because things are not going the way you planned them to. You got to refocus then. If something's not happening the way that you want it to, then you got to step back from that for a minute and ask yourself, okay, what's not working here? What am I not doing? What am I not seeing? How can I take this opportunity or take this trial, take this obstacle and turn it into an opportunity? How many of you have ever done a SWOT analysis, right? And in business, this is when corporations really look at their position, right? And so the S stands for strengths, W stands for weaknesses, the O stands for opportunities, and the T stands for threat, right? So if you're a business, you want to see where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses. Those weaknesses, you can turn them into opportunities. And then your threats are your competitors, right? And so when you do this SWOT analysis, what you're doing is you're taking those weaknesses or those challenges or those obstacles and you're turning them into opportunities. Because when there's a weakness within you, that means there's an opportunity for you to be better. When there's a challenge, that means that there's an opportunity for you to get past that. You have to figure out what that way is. And the only way to do that is to get creative. You have to be creative in your thinking. You have to be creative in the pursuit of your goals, because the answer is not always going to be so clear to you. And so you have to challenge yourself and you have to push yourself when you don't want to. And when you feel like giving up, and you have to make sure that you have a team around you that is going to push you when you can't push yourself. And that's one of the things that we were saying today to this young girl. Like, you can't see these temporary setbacks as struggles. You really have to look at them as opportunities to become better. And how can you use what you're currently in as a stepping stone to ultimately get you to where you want to be? And so I challenge you guys for this week to kind of do your own SWOT analysis on your own life, on your own dreams, on whatever it is that you have set your eye on, and then work towards that. And then do whatever it takes to make that dream come true. And start by doing an assessment about what you're feeding your mind. Who are you surrounding yourself with? What are the messages that you're taking in, either from friends, from social media, from the music that you're listening to, from the shows that you're watching? All of that contributes to establishing your mindset. For me, I am only surrounded by positivity. I don't want any negative Nellies near me. I don't want anyone who is constantly complaining about their life. I don't need these energy suckers around me, because that energy can be contagious. And so you have to be conscious of what you're subjecting and exposing yourself to. And sometimes that's going to be the people closest to you. And for your own personal growth and evolution, it's okay to step away from them and keep them, a good distance away from you. Because not everyone is going where you're destined to go. You have to protect your future. You have to be intentional about the things that you say you want. You can't say you want something and then don't take the necessary action steps to get there. And sometimes that means you just got to cut mother effers off. It's that simple. I mean, it's hard too to do that, but it really is as simple as saying, I can no longer be around your toxic energy. And until you can go and work on yourself, I cannot subject myself to the constant negativity, to the constant complaining. Have you ever noticed that people who complain or who are ungrateful, they're that way because they're continuously calling that type of energy into their lives? If all you're talking about is negative stuff, if all you're talking about are the things you don't have, if all you're talking about is how the world has done you wrong and you can't find any gratitude in anything in your life, you are going to keep calling in all that miserable crap into your life. And I know people like this that are living like this to this very day. They're just miserable and they're speaking negativity into their lives. And no matter how many times I tell them, shift your mindset, shift your words, the words that you speak become your reality. If a person is not ready, they're not ready. But you don't have to subject yourself to that. You have the power of free will. You have the power of choice, and you at any moment in your life can make the decision to not participate in certain behavior. You have to take your life into your own hands. And if people can't respect that, then you don't need those people in your life. Keep it moving. You are not tied to any person in this lifetime. You were born alone, you're going to die alone, right? And in between the being born and the dying, you want to make sure that you can create a life that is fulfilling, a life that is full of joy, peace, and happiness. And if the people and things that you're surrounding yourself with don't display any of that, then you gotta let them go. I mean, it's that simple. So that really ends this week's episode of the podcast. This week was kind of short just because I think I pretty much got my message across. I hope that this episode brought some insight to your own situation. If you have anything that you'd like to share, make sure that you leave us a comment if you're on Apple iTunes or the podcast. And if you haven't already done so, kindly leave us a review, leave us a 5-star rating if you love it. I can't stress it enough that although I really don't care for numbers, in this instance, it really helps to amplify the podcast and make it visible to others who may not know who I am or this work that I do. And I mean, we do some really great work here. We're sharing a lot of great content, and there are plenty of people who need to be inspired and empowered and motivated. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. And I will catch you next week. Same day, same time. And until next time, mi gente, go out there and crush those goals.